Here's 10 strategies for working on better time. Fair warning, I don't think you're gonna love number 7, but it's something that we all need. Let's get into it. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rubicki. I'm glad that you're here. We have another viewer request this week, and this has to do with time and rhythm. This person was saying that they felt that they were always rushing. And so I thought, let me curate some ideas that I have encountered over the years and some things that are relatively new to me. I mean, nothing revolutionary necessarily, but I wanted to give you 10 things that we can do to work on this concept of having better time. But before we do that, I want to give a caveat, which is that we should understand that on many, many great recordings of true masters that we have in the pantheon of greats, there are recordings where tempos themselves as a whole slow up or speed up or slow down over the course of a performance. But generally the overarching idea is that the band is grooving so hard, it feels so good, it doesn't matter that it's slowing down a little bit or speeding up a little bit. Sometimes it's more than a little bit, but still it can feel so great. And so that caveat is like, yes, we want to work on time without question, and we don't want to completely abdicate our responsibilities there. But understanding that the most important thing is to make music and to lock in with the musicians that are around you. So that said, let's get into number 1, which has to do with listening. Of course, listening is a huge part of what we should be doing, but when I say listening, I'm talking about a couple things related to that. The first is to pay attention to things that have a good feel that you want to emulate, and you have to obsess over them. When I say obsess, I mean like obsess as much as possible. That becomes the thing that you listen to the most and over and over again, and it's on in the background, and it's on while you're working, and it's on while you're practicing, and it's what you focus on. So you just sort of take ownership of an album or a tune. I have a playlist of different tunes that I find are the feels that I'm trying to emulate. So obsess over it. Number 2 is to play along with those recordings even when they usually have a bass player. So you want to pretend that you are Paul Chambers or Ray Brown or Wilbur Ware or whomever, while the recording is going, play along, try to lock in, try to mimic that feel with them. It doesn't matter that your notes are going to clash. You're just mimicking the feel. And that can also warm up your time feel as well, as I've mentioned in other videos. So after a while of doing that, Chick Corea, in answering a question in a masterclass, said something very smart and very simple, which is turn off that recording and just keep trying to play. Can you mimic what you were just playing with? So that's the idea, sort of, really reconnect with the sound of great rhythm and great time so that you can have it in your mind's ear all the time. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 has to do with considering subdivisions of the beat. And what I mean by this is to internalize, be able to hear, sometimes consciously think about the subdivisions of time, especially at medium to slower tempos, where we might cheat the length of the note, right? If it's a slow tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we don't give those quarter notes their full length, it's gonna rush, just like our viewer friend was saying. So one thing to do is to think about the subdivisions. Eighth notes, or I find triplets, are particularly helpful. I know a lot of people say triplets are helpful for considering the subdivision in your mind. So if it's 1, 2, triplet, 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 triplet. I'm hearing it in my head. Triplet, triplet, triple. So that basically fills up empty space, so to speak, when you are focusing on a subdivision of the slow beat that you're playing. And of course, you can do that at faster tempos too. You might become eighth notes at that point, but you're trying to just give yourself something to latch on to. I don't particularly move my feet or body a whole lot when I play, which I've been complimented on, but also like, it didn't feel right taking the compliment because For me, it's because I'm trying to put everything here, right? And so I had to find a way over time to just sort of feel it in my body without moving a lot. Like I don't tap my feet when I play, although that's totally fine if that's what it takes for you to do. So consider those subdivisions. Let's move on to number 3 now. Now, number 3 is connected to number 1, which has to do with listening and playing along. But as has been mentioned in other sort of instructional videos in various places online, there are several recordings from masters that don't have bass on them, but have other instrumentation. And so we can play along with that and be playing with the masters and feeling their time and trying to lock in with what they are doing. In the attached PDF from this video, I've got a list of CDs that I think are worthwhile, stuff from Kenny Barron and Red Garland, Bill Evans, and so on and so forth, that we can try to play along with. Now, there's not always standards on all these, but usually there's like 1 or 2 standards on there, that tunes that you already may know or that are working on. So I tried to give you a variety with some links right to the YouTube videos of these particular songs, so that you can find something that you like and again, play along with it. Going to that same idea of playing with a bass player, here we're playing, you know, we have room for us now, but now we're paying attention to the piano and whatnot, and maybe there's no drums, and that's also really great. The fourth idea I want to present to you has to do with using rhythmic studies on the bass, but thinking of the bass more as just a percussion instrument. In other words, we're eliminating notes or pitches altogether. So one thing that I learned from Carlos Enriquez in many conversations with him is something that he practices for his right hand. And that is to take a towel of some kind, or you know, something, whatever it works, some kind of band or whatever, and essentially hold it around the neck. I'm sort of holding it on this side, right? And so I'm muting all the strings at once, and I don't have to like keep my hand up or keep my hand down. And it really creates just percussive sound on the instrument, right? There's no pitch whatsoever. So all I'm thinking about is connecting and making good time and good rhythm with my right hand here. Whatever your rhythmic study is, shuffle thing, whatever it is, this can be helpful because you're eliminating, right, one of the variables. And when you get one hand strong, you can then use that as you use the other hand to feel stronger. So when you work on the right hand for a long time and then introduce the left hand, it's going to feel easier and you're going to have an easier time connecting the two. And so this can be very, very helpful as well for speed with the right hand and also for strength with the right hand if you're working on your sound, like just using a single finger. I'm lifting my hand up here so you can see on the camera. You know, whatever it takes related to the right hand, this is going to help you a lot. And when you work with metronome, which we'll talk about next, this would be a good thing to do. So let's move on to the next idea now. My fifth suggestion has to do with the metronome, the famous, infamous, dreaded, or loved metronome. And yes, it is important to use it, but I want to invite you to use it correctly. And what I mean by this is that we want to use it as a tool to assess and double check our time, not to rely on it. And so, of course, there are instances where when you're trying to figure out a particular rhythm, it can be helpful to have a click on every beat. And you're probably already familiar with being able to play the metronome on 2 and 4. And that can be helpful, yes, but then you're only responsible for every other beat as far as like the distance between beats and whatnot. And there's a place for that for sure. But there are sort of metronome games that are taught in various circles, including online, and I'll go through some of them right now, that are a little more intense and I think ultimately more helpful because it makes you more responsible for your own time, and we're just using the metronome as a secondary device to check ourselves. To that end, one interesting idea that I heard that I have not tried but makes total sense to me is to use headphones or perhaps an in-ear, although I think that might be a little tricky, I'm not sure, because the idea is that you use the metronome with headphones and you get in a groove, find the time and so on and so forth, and then you remove the headphones or one headphone maybe take one off your head if you're using overheads or one earbud out, but leave the metronome running. And so after some time, put it back in, and it's sort of tricky because you got to do one hand while you're playing, right? But maybe just play open strings, put it back in and check where you are. That's a very, very simple concept that I like very much. The other thing that is a general idea related to wherever you place the metronome, be it on every beat or on 2 and 4 or on the end of 4 or every bar like we're going to talk about, try to play phrases like solo phrases or small melodic cells on different parts of the beat. And so as the metronome is going, you'll play a phrase like on the end of 1 and then try to repeat that phrase on the next go round. Maybe leave a bar, play a phrase, leave a bar of space on the next bar, play it on the end of 1. Then leave an empty bar, now play it on 2. Leave an empty bar, play it on the end of 2, and so on and so forth. And that can be helpful for, again, checking where we are as far as subdivisions according to the metronome itself. Some metronome exercises that you might find helpful and may have encountered in your other online studies that I'm trying to gather for you here are very valuable, I think. And one is that rather than using a click on every beat or on 2 and 4, think about using a click per bar. And so that could be beat 1 or it could be beat 2 or beat 3. But for example, if this is the click, this is at 38 beats per minute. 1 and ba 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 ba. Is on beat 1. Okay, one other thing that you can do if you want to challenge yourself a bit more is to make each click equal 2 measures instead of 1. That becomes twice as fast. If we've got the metronome at 40, 3, 4, da 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 da. So that is more challenging, and you can actually go further. Of course, you can have 1 click equal 4 beats or 4 measures, not four beats, 16 beats. So you could think of them as 16 notes or as a super fast walking, but you need a metronome that goes down sort of low enough for you to both be able to process the distance between the 2 clicks and also sort of lower than 40. Most what's that word? Analog metronomes only sort of go down to around 40. Another idea we can do is to set up the metronome so that it is essentially sort of like in groups of 5. And it sounds confusing, but really what you're doing is you're setting it up in your mind and your ear so that the click happens on beat 1 of the bar 1, beat 2 of bar 2, beat 3 of bar 3, beat 4 of bar 4, and then you're gonna have essentially a bar without a click, and then the cycle starts over again. So yeah, it sounds a little bit tricky, but there is a way that you can sort of cheat it if it's a little bit hard, and it is a little bit difficult for me, even if I haven't worked on this in a while, which I haven't. So I've got 2 metronomes. I got one on my phone and then an analog one. And what I've got is the one on my phone is at 40, da, ta, ta, and I set the other metronome at 200, so 5 times 40, and then I'm starting the second one at the same time as a click. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I just make the higher pitched beep your quarter note. I hope that makes sense. It is very, very powerful to try and lock in with this and sort of turn your mind around in this way. Another thing that we can do is to have the click be a subdivision of the bar. It could be any subdivision you want, but to work on our swing feel and to check ourselves again, let's have the click be on the end of 4. So it's click 1, 2, 3, 4, click 1, 2, 3, 4, click 1, 2, 3, 4, click, like that. It's tricky, and here it is as best as I can do it for you. Click, click, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. That is so hard. Let me tell you, I have tried many times to do that, and I'm just presenting the closest I could get there. That is a very, very hard exercise, one that I need to work on some more for sure. Ultimately, we're trying to wean ourselves off of the metronome altogether. We want to be more accountable and have that sense of internal good time, right? So how do we get to that place if we're not sort of comfortable starting right at the beginning with something we were just talking about where it's like 1 click per bar? Well, basically you're baby stepping your way there. So if we go to a more reasonable, moderate tempo, say like I'm going to 160 here, right? We'll think of these like quarter notes. Here's 160, F flutes, right? Quarter notes. So keep that tempo in mind. Right? As we have in half, if we go 50% of where we were. So now we're at 80, I'm trying to get there. Here's 80, but you're keeping that same tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to put it on 2 and a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And now have it again. Now we're back down to those 40 beats per minute we were talking about, or essentially 1 click per bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was rushing, just like our friend who asked the question. It's hard to do this and talk at the same time. So that's essentially just sort of giving yourself a little bit of extra help to get to that place where you're using that click just as a tool to check where you are instead of relying on it for every beat. Let's move on now to the next series of suggestions. Number 6 is a really, really simple one, nothing to really demonstrate here, and that is to use iReal Pro, as we have talked about in our, the last video I did. Use iReal Pro, but turn off the drums. Just have the piano comping. So this is like those things where we're playing with the masters, but of course we have the benefit of iReal Pro. It'll go on forever. We can put it in any key. It's, pretty much almost any tune that you could think of. Yeah, so that's just the idea there. So turn off those drums on iReal Pro and try to make sure that you are in time with the pianist that is playing on there. Let's move on now to suggestion number 7. Idea number 7 is something that we don't love to do, and that is to record ourselves. And most importantly, to listen back, actually listen back. Maybe you don't want to record yourself for too long so that the listening back becomes more manageable. But when you listen to yourself playing time, notice where you get off. And I bet you any money that for the most part, you can figure out what's happening because you're associating what you just played with what you're hearing. So you know, like, oh, I felt tense there, or I wasn't sure what the chord was there, and so on and so forth. So listening, recording and listening back. Number 7, we don't love it, but we got to do it. Let's move on now to number 8. And number 8 is something that hopefully most or all of you can eventually or have the scenario or the environment to do, which is to play with great players with great time. Get with people that you know have good time and play with them and study what they do. And when you're playing, really get into sort of like a trance-like state with whatever part of the instrument they're playing that is repeating over and over again. For drums, that can be the ride or the hi-hat. But you really sort of get into this trance-like meditative state of focusing very, very carefully on what they're doing in just one sort of part of their body or the way they're playing, and you're matching up with that. And also, of course, it is uncomfortable for the asker and the asked sometimes, like, to talk about what's wrong. That said, some of the most powerful moments I've had as an ensemble player have been when me and the musicians talk about what's going on musically including the time. Oftentimes it's you, the bass player and the drummer are talking about, man, I just don't feel like you're really on top of the beat, or I prefer to be behind the beat, whatever. Those kinds of discussions, as uncomfortable as they may be, can be extraordinarily beneficial. To that end as well, getting together just with a drummer, so just bass and drums, can be really instructional. You can really get deep down into it and make sure that you are connecting time with each other. If you're in this traditional thing that I love, we're trying to connect very carefully with that ride cymbal and sort of get in each other's heads. So let's move on now to the next suggestion. The next thing I wanted to talk about is just to consider your actual physical setup of your instrument. And this is perhaps a little bit counterintuitive, but if your strings are too low, you can be sort of pushed or be enticed to rush. We need a little bit of resistance sometimes physically on our hands to actually keep us in check. If you are one to rush, like our friend who asked the question, then this may be particularly helpful for you, although, you know, that's not always the case. But consider, hey, can I raise my strings a little bit? And when you are actually playing time, you'll notice that something about the need to physically overcome the obstacle of getting through the strings is gonna actually keep you more in time. Doesn't always work, but it's something to consider. And I'm not saying that low action is necessarily bad at all, but it's something to keep in mind as we think about keeping good time, right? And also the thing you'll remember that I have mentioned in the past about sound, related to bass sound, is that we need a decay generally in the notes so that we can hear the definition of quarter notes. So when a note is too long and they sort of mush into each other, it's much harder to hear that distinction between one note or another. So being clear is also an important part of helping to, I think, sort of manifest good time. I don't know if it gives you good time, but it helps to sort of manifest that. All right, let's go on now to our last suggestion. The last thing I want to suggest is that you connect in some way with your body outside of the instrument. And as an example of this, a story that I have communicated to others is that when I was particularly into beginning to go to the gym when I was like just starting in college, I mean, I was lifting weights in high school, but like in college, I was much more into cardio stuff. And as has come around now, there are 30 years, like Stairmasters was the popular thing then, and it's popular again, at least according to TikTok. Nonetheless, I would be on the Stairmaster for like 45 minutes. And what I was thinking while I was listening to music or not was like every step I was like on top of the beat, 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 on top of the beat. So any kind of repetitive physical motion that really instills the feeling of good time in your body can help you to then manifest it when we're actually playing the instrument. So dancing, you know, bike riding, some sort of menial tasks around the house or house repair or some kind of hobbies, something that has a repetitive physical motion, thinking about connecting, especially if you're listening to music that has good time, connecting your body to that and having that proprioception, I think is the word, I think, where we're connecting to an idea, right? So using that to influence your concept of time is really powerful, and I say this from direct experience. It really helped me a lot to move from sort of, I think, behind the beat to on top of the beat. And now I'm right in the middle, at least people tell me, towards pushing the beat. I tend to be towards the front or the middle, but I used to be more behind. That said, I think it could be helpful for you, so check that out. So those are my suggestions for today. I truly hope that it was helpful. I know that it's kind of a lot, but I hope that you'll be able to get some stuff from this. Be sure to look for that link below with a PDF where I summarize the things that we talked about. And always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.